Hey artists, I'm here today to work on the poppies with you. So what I want you to do is get your poppy paper for my fourth graders in Mrs. McLean or Mrs. Hidden's class. Get your poppy paper out, get out a pencil, some watercolors, paintbrush, some water, and let's go ahead and get started. For those of you who are just joining us and you haven't been in either of those classes, I would like you to go ahead and get out a piece of paper and a pencil. Let's start there today, and then everyone else can catch up with us as we go. All right, I miss you guys. I hope everybody's doing really well, and I wish we were in class doing art together, but hopefully you'll be able to follow along with me and get some amazing art done. All right, so here we go getting started on our poppies. My friends who were at in class with me, and you've already started this. You have a really nice piece of watercolor paper at home with you. You have started drawing some of your poppies on your paper, and you may have even started inking them with a fine tip ink pen. Now, that's going to be super important in a few minutes. So I'm just going to go back. I know that Mrs. Hidden's class is ahead of Mrs. McLean's class, and so I'm just going to sort of start back at the basics of where we need to. Those of you who are just joining me, I'm going to show you really briefly how to draw a poppy, and then we're going to move on from there. So you can see very lightly on my paper, I have three different types. I have a full poppy drawn, I have a closed poppy, and then I have a halfway opened poppy. I'm going to go ahead and draw a few more so you can watch me do that. So those of you at home can go ahead and create your own. My friends in Mrs. McLean's class, you're going to need to start filling in your paper more. So we want to make sure that we have these poppies all the way down to the bottom of our paper. We want to make sure we're filling up all of our space. Remember, these are close-up poppies. They're not going to be something that's far away. So I've drawn one big one. I'm going to come over here and draw another big one. I'll press a little harder with my pencil so you're able to see me draw. I'm just drawing a really loose, spiky, almost like a star. From there, I'm going to draw a big tongue coming out of it. Those of you who are at home, you have this drawing. If you're in the fourth grade class, some sample drawings were sent home, and it has the steps on it that I want you to take. I'm going to go ahead and do it down at the bottom. It's very loose, and I told some of my students sometimes it's almost better if you use your opposite hand. So if you're not right-handed, you could use your left hand. It helps make your flower looser, and that's really what you want. All right, so I've drawn another big one over here. I'm going to show you how to draw this one. This one is just a little bit open. So I'm going to start by drawing this triangle. It's rounded. And then I'm going to go ahead and draw an open leafy piece. See how it really doesn't, it looks like a fan almost. It doesn't have a specific shape. So these are our state flowers. So we're doing poppies because in fourth grade we study the United States and in California mostly. And so we're going to go ahead and just do a little bit of poppies in our picture. And then our stems. Our stems are not single sticks. Our stems are thicker than that. Poppies, if you look at any kind of poppies out, hopefully while you're walking, you'll see some poppies that you'll notice that their stems are not really thin. They're a thicker tube-ish type stem. So I've done another open one, and I have a closed one. I might even make another closed one come up and hide. Let's see. I haven't done my stems on these two yet. That's because I want to put something down lower. So I might have a closed one up here. I'm going to pop it above. It hasn't opened yet. It's going to go up. It makes sort of a knife-like shape, and then I'm going to cut it in half again. Okay? And then that stem would come. I'm going to bisect it. That means it's going to jump over and bring it down. Now, I like to give my poppies a little bit of a bend because then it makes them look like they're in the wind and they're moving and they're not coming up straight off of perfect sticks. Now, one of the things I'm noticing about my picture right now is that I need to have a little bit more down here at the bottom. All right? Remember, boys and girls, you can stop this video at any time and then you can work on it, okay? So if you see, do you see how now I have a lot of stem right here and not very many flowers? I just am gonna go ahead and add a couple smaller flowers right in here. That's why I'm doing it in pencil first. So I may come in here and add just a lower part opened poppy. and bring my stem down in front. And then I would go through and erase anything that it encounters, okay? All right, after I feel like I've filled in my space with my poppies, I'm gonna go ahead and put some leaves in, and we're gonna make our leaves come out flat. And then they're sort of gonna have just a very organic shape. Organic means it does not have a specific shape to it. It's just sort of lettucey looking, okay? And if you look at a poppy's leaves, you're going to notice that they're very lettucey looking. They even have a few little holes in them as you go through. So I want you to just sit there and take your time. This should be fun. You should be relaxed while you're doing it, and you should be creating really neat shapes as you start creating the details of your poppies. All right? All right, once you have this portion done, and I know that a lot of students in Mrs. Hidden's class have this portion done, you're going to want to go ahead and get a black marker. Now, there's a couple of different markers you can use, and there's one that you absolutely cannot use. So for instance, you could go ahead and use a marker, like a pen that looks like this. It's just a ballpoint pen. It's an ink pen. It's waterproof. That's why we want to go ahead and why it's okay for us to use that. You can also, if you have a thicker Sharpie at home, you could, if you're really, really careful. I would advise you to use that only as a last resort. So I would use this one or a thinner black marker, okay? Those are the two you want to use. You want to use a permanent marker because we're going to be watercoloring over this. We do not want to have our black smear when the water touches it. Okay, so that is why I'm using a permanent black marker. So what you're going to go ahead and do at this point is you're going to go ahead and start tracing all of your black lines. Now I'm showing you this with this black pen because a lot of us have this at home. We may not have a super thin Sharpie at home. Super thin Sharpie would have a tip that looks like this. That would be a thin Sharpie. So you might not have that one at home. You might only have this. And that's why I want to show it to you. So I'm going to go ahead and go through and trace. So you're going to go ahead and go trace over all of your pencil lines. Okay, as you're coming to an end, go ahead and just finish up all of those last parts of your poppy. Make sure, go ahead and check and make sure you have all of the pieces traced, and then you're going to go ahead and grab a big eraser and you're going to erase all your pencil lines. Now that you have all of that erased, put my eraser away, I am going to go ahead and start thinking about how I'm going to color this. Now, a lot of you may not have watercolors at home. So my first suggestion to you is if you do have watercolors, that's what I want you to use. Now, I use educational watercolors at school. They're really hard to find. You can get them on Amazon, but they cost about $10. They're my favorite kind because they're super bright. But these are the next kind. These are just regular Crayola. They're called washable watercolors. So they're just a little bit different. They're not as bright as the ones we use at school. That's okay. They still work. If you do not have watercolors, you can do one of two things. You can go ahead and use the markers, and I'll show you how to make watercolor with marker, or you can take your marker, rub it on tin foil, put your water in it, and you can paint with that, and that will give you a watercolor as well. Again, or I could even do it, I'll show it to you here. It's not going to be quite the same, but I'll show it to you. So here is me with watercolor. I'm going to start by probably looking at some poppies on my computer so I can get the right color for my poppy. And I really, really want to use just small strokes, taking care, and I want to do a lot of water. So I want to bring that water in so I can make some areas extra dark, almost that reddish color. And so I know, Allie, I know that you want to make baby sister Sadie some red poppies. So you can go ahead and do that if you want to. Just remember, we can't call them California poppies anymore. All right? But I know Mom had told me you wanted to do that. So you do that for me, sweetie. Send me a picture when you're done. All right, so then we're going to go ahead and just start painting our poppies this orange color. All right, for those of you who do not have watercolors at home, a couple things. One of the things you can do is you can get, these are my markers, so I'm going to go ahead and pick out a nice bright orange color pumpkin. This is called pumpkin, so I'm going to try this one. So I'm going to just put some this. I would put this on tin foil if you don't have a plastic palette. And you can do this, right? And that's going to give you a nice watercolor. So you see how that works really well? Super easy. You could do this on a plastic bag too if you don't have tin foil at your house. Works just as well. So again, if you want it to be more concentrated, we use less water, but you're going to have a different effect when you use watercolor. All right, the other thing you can do if you don't want to do it this way is take that pumpkin again. Just want to make sure I have the right color. And lightly outline portions of your poppy. And then you can go ahead and use your watercolor to spread that. Okay, so it does the same thing. Now, if you do it with a marker, it's definitely going to leave an edge. So you see this edge that's still here? It's going to leave that there. So it's really up to you the look that you're trying to go for. I think I would rather go with this one than this one. So I would want to get out a piece of plastic or tin foil or a Ziploc baggie and use it that way. Okay, I'm just going to continue going through and painting my entire poppy. I'm going to lighten it and darken it. Look at, I kind of mixed those two, didn't I? That actually works really well. I'm going to work on making some of my spots darker and some of them lighter. And I'm going to finish painting. So go ahead and paint all of your poppy flowers first. All right. So my magic camera is going to go fast, and you're going to see me paint these zippity quick. I do not expect you to paint them that quick, my friends. I expect you to take your time. Now you're going to watch. I'm going to go through in a few of these places and do them darker first, and then I'll bring my light with more water in a minute. All right, now that I'm finishing up my poppies, I'm going to go ahead and start working with some greens. Now, on my paint palette, I have 3 different greens. You may not have that at home, and this might be where if you have a lot of markers, you could use those. The great thing, again, is just dabble it, rub it onto your plastic, and then dip it in here if you need those colors. So I'm going to start working with greens. I'm going to go ahead with my medium green, and I'm going to get a lot of paint on my brush. And I'm going to use just the tip of my brush to pull that green down. Now it's a brightish, like Kelly green. And I'm going to want to come back in here with some other colors. And I'll show you how we'll do that in a minute. So you want to just pull this through, paint up the ends of all of your pieces. Now, you can see how I've gone a little bit outside the lines, and that's okay, as long as you're not making a big mess, but it's hard to stay in the lines. I'm even using the tip of my brush, and sometimes it is a little bit harder to stay in the lines and getting that all on there, okay? hopefully you've been out walking and you've seen these. I've seen them all around, walking and driving on my once a week trip to the store. But I have been at school doing some stuff for the art show, so I have seen it when I drive there. So hopefully you've seen some poppies out. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and finish painting up these leaves and the stems on my poppy. And then I'm going to start adding a few colors into both my poppy and my leaves to liven it up a little bit, all right? I don't want it to look so flat. So to avoid it from looking so flat, oops, I just noticed this, I forgot. I'm going to start adding some brighter green colors just in. You can see where I just brightened that one up. And I'm not going to do it in all over. I'm just going to do it in a few places. So you can see where I've sort of brightened up some of these. Now, if I were at home and I don't have all of these colors, I might look and see if I have a really bright green marker colored on my plastic. So you can see that bright green I just put. Get some water. And then again, you're doing that same thing. You're just adding that green to your picture. Okay? Then I'm going to do the same thing with a little bit of yellow. And I'm going to put that in some of my poppies. Okay? And I really want to mix it, so I don't want it to look like I'm drawing a line in any of these. I just really want to make it look a little bit richer. Okay? Giving it a little bit more depth. Oops, my paint is spreading down here, so you got to be careful about that too. All right, and then I'm going to go ahead and do the centers. The centers of the poppies are a nice brown color, so I will be putting that in there. That's not dark enough for me. This is one of the things I will say about these. The paints I have right now are just washable watercolors. I probably should bring some good ones home from school. But they are not as dark, and I have too much water on my brush. So I want to make sure I let that dry or else it's going to puddle all over. So I put that brown on there. Okay? All right. If you want to let this dry for a few minutes, it might be a good idea before we get moving. If we were at school, we'd be done for the day and we'd be letting that dry for the next set of art weeks to come, and then we'd go ahead and finish it. But right now what we're going to do, we're going to do our background. So pretend mine is dried, right? You're going to let yours sit for a few minutes. You can go get a snack, turn the video off, go get a snack, come back and you can finish it. Or you can sit down tomorrow and do it, all right? Doesn't have to all be done at one time. All right, you can see now that I'm just painting my background with our favorite thing, water. So this technique is called wet. That's right, wet on wet. Now, because yours will have already dried, it's going to make a big difference compared to mine, which hasn't, okay? So what we're going to do now is we're going to create our background, and I'm going to go around the edges of my art. And I know that watercolor likes to bleed, but if yours is dry, it won't bleed as much as mine's going to. All right, so I'm going to start with my lightest green, and I'm just going to start my background, painting it. It looks really yellow to you, but it is actually, it's this bright green color right here. But it's a little bit more yellow looking. Now, you have really nice watercolor paper, and I don't. So that's if you're, I'm sorry, I should only say that for my 4th graders. You have what nice watercolor paper because I sent it home with you. My other friends, you just have regular paper. So your paper, if you don't have watercolor paper at home, yours is going to start looking like mine. Well, what it does is it starts soaking the paper in, and the water doesn't sit on top of the paper, it soaks into it. So it doesn't give us as much of a watercolor effect. If you can, get yourself some watercolor paper because it is amazing. Mixed media paper or watercolor paper works really well. All right, now I'm going to start adding a little bit of the green. This is the same green that we have on our stems. Don't worry, we'll add in a little bit darker in a few minutes. I'm just going to water it down, really bring, so you can see mine is so wet that I have poppies spreading, and we don't want that. Like orange and brown, orange and green are going to make brown, so I really don't want those to touch one another. All right, so I'm getting up here to where I'm going to start wanting to put a little bit of sky in my paper. And you guys can see how I've gone around my flowers. That's because mine is wet. You, on the other hand, would not do that. You're just going to pop those on there. Go right over the tops. Don't, just be careful around your oranges. Okay? All right. So there's a lot of color in there now. Alrighty? See if my other lamp can help us out with that. There, that's a little bit better. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and do that. Now my paintbrush has a little bit of green on it still, and that's okay. I'm just going to pop this up here. If you have other paintbrushes at home, I picked a fatter one, but the one that comes in your watercolor paint palette's a really good brush to use for pretty much everything. Has a nice point on it. All right, I'm going to add some blue now to my sky. Now, play around with your blues. So you want it to be watery though, okay? You really don't want it to be like that. See how dark that is? We want it to have it more of a watery blue. So I'm just going to push it around, and I want it to kind of mix with my green. All right. My flowers are drier, so I'm up here, so I'm feeling a little bit more. Yikes! But I'm taking my time. Getting that on there. Now, when I have a big dot that looks like that, I don't want to keep it there because then that looks like a line. So I'm just going to spread it. Okay. Getting all of those colors on there, all around. Great, guys. Okay, so this should take you a little bit of time. Like I said, take a break, come back and work on this part another time. Pause it. Let your paper dry so that you have a nice sky. Look at how pretty that is. And that's why I really want those greens and blues to mix, because then it doesn't have we don't want a perfect horizon line here. We really want to be able to go bleed in from one to the next. Okay? All right. Now that I have this on here, I'm going to let this dry a little bit. And then you're going to come back after it's dried, and you're going to take that thinner paintbrush and you're going to go back into your green. Now again, if you're using markers, look for your darkest green that you have and make it on your plastic. Get that green and get your paint, dip it in there with some water, and you're going to come back through here and you're going to start adding some grass. All right? And I really want to press it a little bit more and then lift my brush up as I get towards the top, because what I want to make it, I want it to have that point that's on the top. So if I press it and make it wider and then lift it, it'll give it a little bit more. Now I know a couple of you were gone the week we started these. I think McKenna, you weren't gone, and who else's did I put in their bag? So you might have just a blank piece of paper. So again, you're going to want to start back at the beginning with what we were working on, okay? So I'm just getting those grass pieces in here as best I can. If I wanted to go in and dip a little bit more into my other green, I could do that too. Add some of that lighter green grass. And then you notice that I'm making some of them taller than others. All right, so I have that done. And the last thing I'm going to do is kind of fun. I really want this to be dry though, and I don't have time for it to dry. But you're gonna let yours dry, and then when you're done, you're gonna get a wet brush with a lot of paint on it, and then you're gonna do this over your whole picture. But I promise you, if you do it when it's dry, it'll turn out better. Okay? All right. When we were in class, we talked about adding the California State butterfly to it. If you want to do that, you would get a separate sheet of paper and you would draw the butterfly. It's called the dogwood butterfly. Draw the butterfly and then cut it out, and then you would fold it like it's flying and you would glue it on here. But because we're not at school, I'm just going to show you how to do the poppies at this point in time. But feel free to add the butterfly if you would like to. Okay, everyone. If you have any questions, send me an email. Remember that you can pause this as you go, and make sure you take a picture and send it to me. You can send it to my email account, you can send it to me on Facebook, or you can send it to me on Instagram. Alrighty? Alright, you guys, I miss you, and I really hope you have fun making this. I really look forward to seeing what you come up with. Have fun.